Hi everybody, Eve Everett here, and today we're going to talk about winter is coming. What's sold on eBay? Coats, gloves, boots, fur, and a bunch of vintage things. Alright, so minor point of interest. I was asked by email to tell something about myself that most people would find surprising about me. So, alright, fine. I think that one of the most surprising things about me would be the fact that I used to model denim in denim jeans and things like that in the 80s. It was only for like a couple years. I got into it because a friend of mine was doing doing mannequin work where she was I don't know if you remember, but they used to have these poor kids in the mall windows of stores and people would gawk at them, and dreadful. I don't think they do that much anymore, but at the time it was a fairly common practice. And then in addition to that, she was doing some catalog work and things like that. So she took me along with her. Over time I got some jobs and I got booked a couple times. And one of the bookings I got was to be, I would often do this whole group modeling thing. Like the whole concept would be, okay, we have a group of high school kids and are all excited about being at school or whatever, and you would see those in some magazines. But for the most part, I did the Cowdoor catalog, stuff like that. Not exactly Cindy Crawford, believe me. It was I was a second stringer at best, and I didn't last more than a couple years even doing that because I just wasn't tall enough and I didn't grow the way I was hoping I would grow. But I didn't get tall enough. What are you going to do? So anyway, highlight of the career, so to speak, was someone got sick and I got to do a major spread that was going to ultimately end up in 17 magazine. And I was really excited and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be great. Well, as it turned out, the only picture that they chose to run was a picture. It was a group picture, and it's not this one, but I have my whole body is kind of turned back, and I got my hair is kind of across, so you couldn't tell who I was. So I'm like, well, if I say anything oh, look at me, here I am, I'm going to sound like I'm a bragging fool, and then people are going to be like, that's not you, So my second hope was then, okay, well, surely someone's going to be looking through the magazine at school. They're going to see me, look at the magazine advertisement and go, oh my God, that's you. Never happened. So it was the highlight, but most depressing time. I'm telling you, it was oh, this is dreadful. But you know what? I think that ended up being so typical, in some of my life that looking back on it now is yeah, it figures, right? So anyway, that's the answer to the question of the week, I guess. All right, moving on. Here we have a vintage mid-century, maybe going into the late 60s possibly, eggplant purple wool fur coat with what looks to me to be a lynx or fox fur collar. And I got this for $24.99 at a thrift shop that I actually don't go to anymore because it just is too far away from me. But I really liked the coat, and I ended up selling that for actually surprisingly less than what I had hoped for, $89.99 plus shipping. This is a 1970s zigzag blonde, brown, and black mink striped fur coat. Really, really impressive looking. And, if you had this coat in front of you, all those pieces were individually sewn in and really well done. Ended up shipping this to the United Kingdom, sold it for $122.50 plus $30 shipping. And what happened is the person got it, and over a month and a half went by, and then they contacted me through eBay and said, oh, the fur is dry, and I took the coat to be fixed, and they said they couldn't fix it, so I want my money back. And I said, okay, well, return the coat. And they didn't want to return the coat. So ultimately what happened is I didn't hear from them ever again. So as strange as that was, they didn't leave me any feedback, and they didn't file a claim, which was odd. So I think maybe what happened is maybe they wanted to get the coat altered, and maybe found out that because of the construction of the coat, that would be either very expensive or impossible to do. But in any event, I was very pleased with that sale, and it's a very beautiful coat. By the way, putting ethical and moral considerations aside about fur, fur can do pretty well, but you really have to be on top of damage, especially if you're dealing in vintage fur, because the fur can shed, it can be dry, there can be damage to the shoulder regions where the coat is hung that can be difficult to see. And also, surprisingly, people don't climate control their furs as much as you would think they would. Fur coats, I think, pretty much were really big in the 80s, and ever since then, personally, I think have been on a decline. But they still can be a decent seller, and if you learn the basics of selling fur, you can do pretty well during the fall and winter season. This is a late Victorian to Edwardian beaver fur hat. It's wired in the middle, so it kind of stands up a little bit, and it has a brown velvet bow and rim, as you can see. I sold that for $89.99. If you're going to get into fur, another thing you have to be concerned about is being very careful to know the difference between seal fur that is illegal to sell. I think there's only one variation of seal fur that you can sell, and you have to be very specific about that, or eBay will flag you. And beaver and seal can be difficult to tell apart. There's other furs that are illegal to sell, obviously, so you kind of have to be on top of that, because there are consequences, some of them extreme, when selling the wrong types of fur inadvertently on eBay. Like certain types of leopards, so forth and so on, can just get you in a lot of hot water, not only on the federal level, but of course, which doesn't happen very often, but certainly wouldn't want to press my luck there. So avoid the illegal furs. A hint is when you're at an auction in the middle of nowhere or wherever you may be, and you have a beautiful fur and it's going for like pennies. If you're wondering why that is, it's probably because it's illegal to sell. So anyway, that's my take on that. You can certainly Google it and do your research, but eBay will definitely flag anything that they think is inappropriate to sell on their site. So that's another reason why you have to really know your fur if you're going to do it. But anyway, this one sold for $89.99. Oh, and that took me about 3.5 months to move. This is a vintage mid-70s tan sheepskin and shearling coat, size 42. And I sold this for $99, and that took me 7 days to sell. This is a Hudson Bay Point blanket coat, stadium length. Hudson is typically like an off-white with that green, red, yellow, and black stripe. They sell blankets in this. They sell coats and other things. It was a fairly sought-after design in the 70s into the early 80s, I would say, and it's still very collectible. This one sold for $64.99, and it took me under a month to sell that. This is a cropped black leather motorcycle jacket from the mid-80s, and really cool looking. When Kate Moss wore hers a few years ago, selling these got really poppin'. I sold mine for $94.99, and I actually shipped this to a woman in Denmark that I do a lot of business with. Normally she buys antique clothing, so it was interesting that she bought this. So I bet she looks like a total badass. This is a mid-century varsity Letterman sweater cardigan, and I found 3 of these hanging up at a thrift shop, and most of them were in pretty good shape. One had some holes in it, but it was really cool to pick up. I think that they are not selling as well as they used to. However, it took me a little over a year, and I moved mine for on a best offer for $56.99, and they did pay overseas shipping, although I undercharged them $20 like an idiot, but I shipped that to Japan. This is a antique Victorian, possibly Edwardian, but I think it's earlier. It's an antique black velvet coat, and what's remarkable about this piece was the condition that it was in. It was as if it came from wherever it came the day of. Everything about it was in great condition, and it can be very difficult to find antique clothing for children in this condition. So I did sit for some time. I had a few people haggle with me over it, but I waited, and I got $124.99 for this. Moving up about 100 years or so, this is a pair of men's Grando mittens, and they are ugly mittens, but people buy Grando, and if you price them decently, you can, get a fair amount of money. I sold these for $39.99, and didn't take me very long to move. Looks like it took me a little under a month, maybe 3 weeks. But I know that some people sell these for less. Just price them reasonably. I mean, you'll see that what people are getting for them if you do a sold search on eBay, and you will get your price. If you don't sell these, you should consider it. This is a stand-in fisherman's Aran wool sweater, and it was an extra large. And Aran sweaters are, I think, fairly stable, reliable sellers, although that should be part of a stock that is well diversified to weather slowdowns and so forth. And by the way, man, this election has really slowed stuff down. People got to get buying. Anyway, I sold this for $54.99. I'm sorry, $54.99. And it took me this one took me a while to sell. It took me about a little under 6 months. This is another variation on the theme, so to speak. This is from Ireland by Innes Crafts. It's a Irish beige cable wool cardigan. It kind of has a weird neckline there, and wasn't a huge fan of it personally. Usually it's like a struggle. Do I sell it, keep it, sell it, keep it? And I always try to go on the side of selling, of course, because it's a slippery slope, people. I know you know what I'm saying. Anyway, 100% merino wool, size medium. I sold this for $42.99, and that took me under a month to sell, and shipped it to Alaska. This is a Banana Republic 100% cashmere ribbed sweater hat, and I like finding these because they're just easy to kind of pop up there, especially if they're cashmere. They usually move reasonably fast. I sold this one for $24, and it took me 6 days to sell, and I shipped that right down the road from my house to top it off. Here we have a vintage men's Shandon pom-pom, a plaid wool newsboy cap, and I've always liked picking these up. They can do very well. I know that other people have success with them, so it's good to pick them up if you see them, especially if they have that whole golf vibe with the pom-pom. Anyway, this was a size 7 1/8, and I sold this for $26, and that took a little under a month and 3/4 to move. Shipped that to California. This is one of the ones that I thought about keeping. It's got a very interesting pattern, plus a little bit of metallic thrown in. I don't know. I thought the pom-poms were kind of cool too. This is a blue paisley and fur pom-pom pashmina wrap. I sold it for $34.99, and that took me about 3 weeks to sell. Here we have a very soft colored red and blue plaid cashmere scarf that came from West Germany, and I sold this for $24.99, and that shipped to California. That actually took me a little longer to sell. I had that it sat around for a little over a year before it went. This is a cashmere sweater with a cowl neck and 3/4 sleeves, and I sold this for $39.99, and it took me about 3 months to sell that. Here we have a dark gray wool coat with a mink fur, blonde mink fur collar and wrist, and I sold that for $42.99, and that took me about a year and a half to move. I'm finding that vintage coats with here goes my rabbit, which I owe you guys a picture of. I know. I'm finding that some certain types of coats are moving a lot slower in the vintage categories in terms of the ones with the fur collars. So if you're going to pick these up, just keep that in mind. You might be stuck with it for some time. This is a Victorian black wool wrap. It has the soutache across the bottom there. It has a black taffeta ruffle, which suggests to me it might have been a mourning cloak used for a funeral or the mourning period thereafter. And pretty crappy picture I took of this thing. I was not picturing very well. My camera would not cooperate for some dumb reason, and it had specks on the picture. But anyway, people overlooked that. Aside from that, it was in reasonably decent shape for his age, and I sold this for $39.99. And the reason I didn't get more for that is because it's a pretty mundane wrap, all things told. So I was happy with that price. It took me about 8 months to get that. And this one is actually one of my favorites. It's a Henry Bendel. It's like a metallic print coat with fur from the 1920s. And this was actually worn by an extra on Boardwalk Empire at some point. And the funny thing about this is the person contacted me and said that they were in a real hurry and they had to have this like in a day and a half. And I said, okay, fine, I can do that, but the fur on this coat is very damaged, like very damaged. And she said, I don't care, I don't mean to be rude, but I need it right away, and we either have a deal or we don't. So I'm like, all right, fine. And this thing did have a lot of damage to it, but it was a Henry Bendel. It has a very iconic print of the times. It's got this, it's hard to see, but for the 20s, that print pretty much, I think, personifies the era. And I think that they thought that too. I sold that for $475. Even with the damage, they took it and they used it. And believe it or not, I did look through Boardwalk Empire to see if it was actually worn, and I, for the life of me, cannot find it on the show. So if you see this, let me know. But that's where it went. And as promised, here is a picture of the rabbit. It's a lion head rabbit, which you occasionally hear in the background here. And her name is Bun Bun. Yep, we got real creative there, didn't we? All right, everybody. Have a fantastic November. Have a great Thanksgiving. Happy holidays. Yep, we're getting into it now, right? Hope you make a lot of money and good hunting.